Welcome to Justice in Two Languages.
Hey everyone, welcome back to an all-new episode of Justice in Two Languages with Attorney David Idinopulos. I'm your host, Mike Leon. David is the founder of Elias Law out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, bilingual personal injury attorney. I know about that bilingual part, David. And he's helping New Mexicans navigate life after serious accidents, from medical treatment to fair compensation. And in today's episode, we're going to be breaking down what really happens when the insurance company gets involved and how having the right lawyer can help you level the playing field. David, it's good to see you. Let me ask you here on the onset, after a crash or an injury from a crash, most people get that first call from the insurance adjuster, the claims adjuster, let's say, before they've even seen a doctor. What should they keep in mind when they get that call, when they're having that conversation?
Well, first of all, Mike, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you being interested in what I have to say. What people need to know first when an insurance company calls them is the insurance company is not calling you to do you any favors. And they sort of bifurcate their system. They have different teams of adjusters. So when you first have an accident, that first team of adjusters is a team that is trying to get you to settle as quickly as possible. And they do that by sort of tugging on your heartstrings a little bit. Oh my gosh, we're so sorry to hear about your accident. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. Well, we really want to help you, et cetera, et cetera. And you just need to know, more than anything else, the insurance company is not calling you because they feel awful. They are not calling you because they want to be friends with you. They are calling you because they are doing business, and their business is trying to hold down the amount of money that they pay you.
And in those phone calls and conversations, in your history of doing this, what kind of misunderstandings or maybe even some assumptions that tend to cause problems between the injured people and the adjusters early on? You said some of it there, they tend to placate to your sensitivities, but like, what are some of the other misunderstandings that people maybe miss?
That's a really good question. I would say the biggest one is when an insurance adjuster calls you right after an accident and says, we need to take your statement. And so what the average accident victim thinks is, one, that statement is necessary, and two, once I give that statement, we will be on the road to receiving fair compensation from the insurance company. And the reality is the insurance company wants to take your statement because they hope that you will say something that will lower the value of your case or give them an out that they otherwise don't have. And I'll give you an example of that. You may get a call from the insurance company, and the insurance company will ask you a few questions. One, you don't have to give your statement. There is nothing that requires you to give your statement. There is no law, no statute, no rule, no custom that requires you to give your statement, right? But if you give your statement and the insurance company says, how many car lengths was our driver in front of you when the accident happened? And you don't have an accurate, you may have said to yourself, I don't know exactly. Then the insurance company is going to say something like, well, you weren't paying attention. And because you weren't paying attention, the value of your case goes down. Or they may say, what color was the vehicle next to you? And if you actually say something like, I don't know, I wasn't paying attention, again, the insurance company is going to say, you weren't paying attention, the value of your case goes down. That is a common mistake that we see a lot of people make. And the other thing is, once we get involved and we try to negotiate with the insurance company, a lot of times they will pull out that statement and say, well, your insured, your client rather, said that he wasn't paying attention. And so we are not going to pay full value on this claim. Very common.
David, when you're reviewing a new claim, what are there some early signs that kind of tell you or indicate, hey, this is not being handled fairly?
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of times, I mean, you can just sort of tell in the insurance companies the minute you have a conversation with an insurance adjuster, when they start mentioning a lot of extraneous details, details that I just mentioned. Well, it was a 35 mile per hour zone, and your client did not say exactly how fast she was going. She just said she was going with the flow of traffic. So obviously she doesn't know how fast she was going. A lot of times insurance adjusters will try will try to get us off our game, will come up with very tangential and spurious arguments, things that really have nothing to do with the case, but they're sort of planting little seeds in the minds of, if they're talking to the client directly, little seeds to cause doubt. And they will do that with us occasionally. Not the experienced adjusters so much, but a lot of, particularly the young adjusters and the young frontline adjusters who view, a standard accident as a knife fight. And so every dollar that they save is a dollar that can go in their pocket. You have to sort of know the tricks of the trade to be able to recognize it. But once you know what you're looking for, it's really obvious that the insurance company is just trying to hold down the value of the claim.
And speaking of tricks of the trade, I'm sure there's evidence that you would recommend people gather, especially they can make a big impact when you're negotiating. So what kind of evidence is it? Photos, treatment records, bills? Give us some examples.
The best thing to do is to exchange information, obviously, at the scene, get photos. And if you can take a video recording of the vehicles while you are asking the other driver, hey, how did this accident happen? If you can get that other driver to say, oh man, I just wasn't paying attention, or I glanced down for a minute as you're going around the car, sort of taking the videotape, that is a great piece of evidence. The big mistake that people make, and the piece of evidence that we really want is, if you're hurting, get in an ambulance and go to an emergency room. Now, sometimes you need to do that just because, obviously you may have a serious injury. But the other thing is, it's crazy, right? You want to be the good guy. You want to hold down costs. You want to hold down expenses. But the insurance company will use the fact that you did not go by ambulance to an emergency room to say, well, you could not have been seriously injured because you didn't get an ambulance and go to to the emergency room.
The other part of this, David, is that sometimes it feels like the process is just dragging on forever and forever. What's actually happening for folks that are uninitiated behind the scenes during these long waiting periods?
When we are representing somebody, there are a lot of sort of moving parts to any claim. For example, we have to establish liability. We have to get the police report. Even though police officers say, the report will be ready in 10 days, I've seen reports take as long as 2 months. And depending the city that you're in, if you had an accident in Las Cruces, New Mexico, it's a small city, smaller population, you may get the police report faster. But if you have an accident in a larger city, a city like Phoenix, for example, it may take you 2 or 3 months to get that police report. And without that police report, in some cases, we don't even know what insurance company it is that we are dealing with. So we got the information for who caused the accident, what insurance companies are involved, and the client gets treatment. Well, obviously, once the client gets treatment, we have to order records and bills. And again, depending on the facility that the client went to, some facilities get those bills and records to us very quickly. Some take a long time. And obviously, we can't send out a demand and begin the process of negotiating unless we have all the bills. This morning, I was talking to one of my paralegals, and I told her, hey, we ordered these bills 3 months ago. They are not in. Literally, the emergency room records and bills are the only thing that we are waiting on to prepare a demand, and there's a holdup. And obviously, if there's a 3-month holdup on getting the records and bills, there's a 3-month holdup on getting the demand out and negotiating. And I could go on and on and on about all the pieces of evidence that we need. But the fact is that when a client calls and says, hey man, what's going on with my case? Why is it taking so long? There are a lot of layers behind that answer that we have to deal with before we can get a demand out and start negotiating.
Speaking of negotiating, how do you know when it's time to stop negotiating and file a lawsuit instead?
Many times it depends on what the client's expectations are, on what the client's needs are. I'll give you a really great example, right? I represented a guy a few months ago who had an accident down in Carlsbad, New Mexico. And we do business all over the state. I'm located in Albuquerque. After I do this podcast today, I got to drive up to Santa Fe. And on Thursday, I'm driving down to Las Cruces to take a case. And so we take cases all over the state, right? But this gentleman had an accident in Carlsbad, New Mexico. and we were negotiating with the insurance company. And to be honest, the insurance company was not offering enough money to settle the case. Had we gone on for another 45 days of negotiating, eventually I think, would have gotten to where the number that I felt was appropriate to settle the case at. And obviously, if they're not going to offer that number and the client agrees, we are going to file a lawsuit to get that client the money that he wants. But in this particular case, the client called me and he said, okay, I understand what the offer is. You're telling me the offer is about $7,000 light. However, I'm in a business, and my business, interestingly enough, is porta potties, right? The guy buys porta potties, rents them out to various construction sites, oil field sites, things like that. And he said, look, I got an opportunity to buy a bunch of porta potties and I need the money. So although, you think the case is worth $7,000 more and I would love to have that $7,000 in my pocket, I have a business opportunity right now and I need to move on that business opportunity. So can you settle the case for me now rather than later so I don't miss out on it? So sometimes it's something as simple as that. Sometimes it's, the insurance company is not offering enough. We need to keep negotiating. We need to keep pushing on. Sometimes we file that lawsuit, send it to the insurance company, and the insurance company says, we give up. You called our bluff. We'll pay the rest of this claim. It varies. And I know that people don't like that answer. I know that people, they'll ask an attorney an answer or a question rather, and the attorneys say, well, it depends, but it depends.
Right. So, David, as we land the plane on this episode, somebody's listening to this right now. They're handling a claim. Maybe they've already spoken with the claims adjuster, let's say the first time. They hung up. Now they found your podcast. What practical steps can they take right now to protect themselves before they talk to that adjuster again?
Yeah, the first thing is break off communication. There is no reason to keep talking to the adjuster, and the adjuster wants to keep talking to you so that they can develop a relationship. It's just like dating, right? The more you talk to a person, the more that person is going to like you, the more you are going to be able to convince that person that you are the one for them. The adjusters do the same thing, right? Again, try to be nice to the client. They try to keep you in the fold. They, for lack of a better term, they would rather have you inside the tent pissing out than outside the tent pissing in. So break off communication. The other thing, obviously, is call a lawyer. Sit down with a lawyer. See what that lawyer says. We don't charge for consultations, and I'm not the only attorney by any stretch that doesn't charge for a consultation. But a client comes to me and says, hey, I want to find out what my options are, what my rights are. I'll tell the client. Client doesn't hire me, decides to do it on his or her own, then they decide to do it on his or her own, but I will have done my job. And, no matter what, if you hire an attorney or you deal with the insurance company on your own, something I don't recommend, but it's always better to have more information than less. And it's also always good to understand the insurance company. It ain't your friend.
Yeah. Ain't your friend. Maybe the title of the episode. David, thank you for the time and insights. I truly appreciate it.
Mike, thank you so much. I appreciate you being interested in what I had to say.
And that's it for today's episode of Justice in Two Languages. If you want to learn more about David and the team over at Elias Law, do me a favor. Visit abogadoelias.com. You're going to find resources in English and Spanish to help you recover after an accident and protect your future. And thank you to everyone for not only listening to this episode, but do me a favor before you go. Hit subscribe, like it, leave a review and comment, or share it with someone who needs to hear it. As always, I'm Mike Leon. See everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.